The quiet town Riversend was the kind of town where nothing much ever happened. Tucked between rolling hills and the slow-moving river Willows, its charm lay in its simplicity. The town boasted a population of just over 3,000, with everyone knowing one another by name. Life here moved at an easy pace. People worked, raised their families, and gathered for community events like the annual Fall Fair. Crime was nearly unheard of, with the sheriff's department usually handling minor disputes or the occasional rowdy teenager. For the longest time, River's End felt insulated from the darker realities of the world outside. But all that changed one crisp autumn morning. Emily Carter, a beloved high school teacher, didn't show up for work. It wasn't like her. She was known for her dedication to her students and her punctuality. Concerned, a few colleagues went to her house, hoping to find her. But Emily was nowhere to be found. By mid-afternoon, a search party was organized, and later that evening, the worst fears were confirmed. Emily's body was discovered in the dense woods just beyond the river. The gruesome nature of the crime left everyone in shock. Emily hadn't just been killed, she had been brutally attacked. In a town where violence seemed like something distant, the discovery of such a crime shattered the community's sense of safety. Rumors spread quickly. Who could have done such a thing? Sheriff Tom Willis, a 25-year veteran of the force, was put in charge of the investigation. Willis had seen his fair share of petty crimes, but murder, especially one so brutal, was a rarity. As he stood at the crime scene, the weight of the task ahead pressed on him. The people in River's End looked to him for answers, but this was unlike anything the town had ever experienced. Emily had no known enemies, no complicated past. She was well-liked, respected, and engaged in her community. And yet she was now at the center of a dark mystery that no one could fathom. As Sheriff Willis began the difficult task of uncovering the truth, one thing became clear. This was no random act of violence. Someone had wanted Emily dead, and that someone was still out there, hiding among the familiar faces of the town, suspicions and secrets. As Sheriff Tom Willis dug deeper into the investigation, the seemingly peaceful facade of River's End began to crack. Emily Carter, once thought to have lived a simple, uneventful life, had more secrets than anyone realized. The first and most obvious suspect was her boyfriend, Ben Harding, a local mechanic with a history of violence. Ben was known for his temper, and people had often seen him and Emily arguing in public. His explosive outbursts had caused many to believe he was capable of something as terrible as murder. Ben became the town's prime suspect almost immediately. Sheriff Willis was reluctant to jump to conclusions, despite the pressure mounting from the community and the town's leadership. The mayor, John Matthews, was particularly vocal, urging Willis to act swiftly to restore peace. But Willis knew rushing would only lead to more questions, not answers. He needed to look deeper. As he interviewed Emily's colleagues, friends, and students, another name surfaced: Kyle Preston, a troubled 17-year-old who had been expelled from school just weeks before the murder. Emily had been tutoring Kyle privately, trying to help him get his life back on track. But according to rumors, their relationship had grown too close. Some people whispered that Kyle had developed an unhealthy obsession with Emily, and his unstable behavior could have easily led to violence. Kyle's expulsion was due to increasingly erratic behavior, and many believed this might have pushed him over the edge. Meanwhile, the town buzzed with speculation. Everyone had an opinion on who was responsible. Some believed Ben Harding's violent tendencies made him guilty beyond a doubt, while others were convinced Kyle's fragile mental state was the key to solving the mystery. What was clear to the sheriff, though, was that both men had secrets they were trying to hide. Sheriff Willis found himself navigating a delicate investigation. The town was growing impatient, especially with a suspect as obvious as Ben in the picture. But something about Ben's involvement didn't quite add up. As the sheriff continued his search, he couldn't shake the feeling that something far more sinister was lurking beneath the surface. Emily's death had become more than just a murder. It was the spark that began to unravel the carefully woven fabric of River's End, exposing layers of deceit that no one had expected. The wrong suspect. Tensions ran high as Sheriff Tom Willis zeroed in on Ben Harding, the mechanic with a notorious temper. Public opinion in Riversend was largely against Ben. Everyone knew he had a history of violence, and the rumors of his volatile relationship with Emily Carter only added to the suspicion. When his fingerprints were found on a tire iron near the crime scene, it seemed like the case was solved. Ben was arrested, and many in town breathed a sigh of relief. The killer had been caught, or so it seemed. But something didn't sit right with Sheriff Willis. Despite Ben's anger issues and the heated arguments he'd had with Emily, he didn't seem capable of committing such a brutal, premeditated murder. The evidence was circumstantial. His prints on the tire iron didn't mean it was the murder weapon. And though Ben's alibi was shaky, Willis felt they were missing something crucial. Then, a breakthrough came when one of Emily's close friends discovered a hidden journal in her apartment. In the pages of the journal, Emily had detailed a growing fear that someone was stalking her. She described feeling watched, receiving threatening letters, and even noticing small signs that someone had been near her house without her knowing. What stood out to the sheriff was that Emily never named her stalker, but the sense of dread in her writing was palpable. It was clear that she had been terrified for months before her death. This revelation cast doubt on Ben's involvement. If Emily had been stalked for so long, then the murder was likely more premeditated than a crime of passion. Perhaps Ben had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sheriff Willis began looking for other suspects, revisiting old leads and re-interviewing people close to Emily. Kyle Preston, the troubled teen, was still on Willis's radar, but the sheriff didn't have enough to link him definitively to the crime. What Willis now knew for certain was that they had been too hasty in their arrest of Ben Harding. His public vilification had led the investigation down the wrong path. As the sheriff quietly began piecing together a new theory, the pressure to officially charge Ben mounted. But the truth was far from being uncovered. The real killer was still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the town to let its guard down once again. Unmasking the killer, Sheriff Tom Willis had a sinking feeling that the investigation had gone off course. With Ben Harding in custody, the town believed the case was closed, but Willis knew the real killer was still out there. Emily Carter's journal had pointed to a long-term stalker, someone far more calculating than Ben could ever be. As he dug deeper into her life, new evidence began to emerge, leading the sheriff toward an unexpected and chilling conclusion. The breakthrough came when Willis revisited Emily's connection to the mayor's family. Emily had been close to Mayor John Matthews' son, David Matthews, a young man who had struggled with mental health issues for years. David had always been a quiet, withdrawn figure in town, but something about his recent behavior caught Willis's attention. Several people mentioned David's odd obsession with Emily. He had confided in a few friends about feelings for her, feelings that had been unreciprocated. The sheriff began to see the pattern. David's obsession with Emily had spiraled into something darker. The threats in Emily's journal were likely from David, but she had never named him, perhaps out of fear of his father's influence in town. As Willis pressed further, he found out that David had been seen near the woods the day Emily's body was discovered. It was enough for a search warrant. The investigation led to David's home, where Willis discovered a chilling collection of evidence in David's room. Photos of Emily taken without her knowledge, notes detailing her daily routine, and even a letter that hinted at his growing desperation when Emily distanced herself from him. David's infatuation had turned into an obsession, and when Emily rejected him, he had snapped. Confronted with the evidence, David broke down and confessed. He admitted to stalking Emily for months, watching her every move, and ultimately confronting her the night of the murder. When she rejected him again, his anger turned to violence, and he brutally killed her, leaving her body in the woods. His father, the mayor, had tried to shield him, hoping the crime would be pinned on someone else. David was arrested, and the truth was finally revealed to the shocked town. Though justice was served, the damage to Riversend was irreparable. The crime had exposed the town's dark undercurrents, the secrets that people kept hidden in the name of peace. Riversend would never be the same, haunted by the crime that had shattered its once peaceful facade.